Passion is not aggression, dismantling the bias that silences Black women's voices. When was the last time you saw a passionate Black woman speak up in a meeting and thought, wow, what a powerful leader? Or did you think something else? The truth we rarely confront is that our workplaces have created a devastating double standard. When some people show passion, they're labeled visionary, committed, or driven. But when Black women display that same intensity, suddenly the labels shift to aggressive, difficult, or too emotional. This isn't accidental and it's not imagined. I recently had the profound opportunity to interview Dr. Chanel Rice, whose groundbreaking work on workplace bias has transformed how we understand the experiences of Black women in professional settings. Dr. Rice isn't just a researcher, she's a revolutionary force challenging the very foundations of how we perceive leadership, passion, and voice in our workplaces. Her insights reveal something both disturbing and liberating. The perception of Black women as aggressive rather than passionate isn't rooted in their actual behavior. It's anchored in systemic bias and deeply entrenched stereotypes. This matters. It matters profoundly because right now in boardrooms and offices across America, talented Black women are dimming their light. They're monitoring their tone, softening their opinions, second guessing their contributions, all to avoid triggering stereotypes they never created but constantly pay for. And we're all losing because of it. The McKinsey Women in the Workplace report from 2023 reveals something staggering. 68% of Black women reported experiencing racial bias at work. That number jumps to 84% among those in senior management positions. The very women who have broken through the most barriers face the most intense scrutiny. Think about that for a moment. The higher Black women climb, the more their passion gets misread, their expertise questioned, their presence challenged. It's as if success doesn't protect them, it exposes them to even greater bias. Dr. Rice's research shows this isn't just uncomfortable, it's exhausting. It creates a tax that no one should have to pay, constantly performing emotional labor to make others comfortable with your presence, constantly proving you belong in rooms you've earned your way into. This is where imposter syndrome takes root. But here's what Dr. Rice wants us to understand. What we call imposter syndrome in Black women isn't primarily an individual psychological issue. It's a rational response to irrational systems. When Joyce Roach was climbing the corporate ladder at Avon, becoming one of the first Black women to reach the highest echelons of corporate America, she frequently questioned if she truly belonged. Not because she lacked talent, her results spoke for themselves, but because everything in the environment signaled she was an outsider. As she later wrote, the feeling of being an imposter wasn't her personal failing. It was the predictable outcome of navigating spaces where she was both racially minoritized and gender marginalized. Every day, she walked into rooms where no one looked like her, where her authority was subtly and not so subtly questioned, where her passion was misinterpreted as aggression. This is what Dr. Rice calls the only experience. Being the only one who looks like you, speaks like you, brings your perspective to the table. And it's profoundly isolating. Twana Carter's executive coaching research with senior Black female leaders reveals something powerful. These women weren't imagining the double standards. They were being mistaken for assistants in their own meetings, having their expertise questioned despite stellar credentials, watching less qualified colleagues advance while they remained stuck. One executive in Carter's research described walking into a board meeting she was leading only to be asked to fetch coffee. Another shared how her passionate advocacy for a project was labeled emotional, while her white male colleague's identical approach was praised as committed leadership. Their passion wasn't the problem. The problem was how that passion was perceived through the distorting lens of bias. Let me be clear about something. This isn't just a women's issue or a Black issue. This is an innovation issue, a leadership issue, a bottom line issue. When organizations silence their most diverse voices, whether intentionally or through unconscious bias, they lose. They lose the creative friction that drives innovation. They lose the perspective that helps avoid costly mistakes. They lose talent they've invested in developing. The McKinsey report showed Black women are being overlooked for promotions more than any other group. Think about the organizational intelligence walking out your door because someone misread passion as aggression. But here's where Dr. Rice's work becomes truly transformative. She doesn't just diagnose the problem, she offers a path forward. First, we must recognize that bias, not behavior, drives negative perceptions. The stereotype of Black women as aggressive persists because of deep rooted biases, not because there's anything wrong with being passionate or assertive at work. This distinction matters because it shifts the burden of change from individuals to systems. When a Black woman speaks passionately in your meeting, the problem isn't her communication style. The problem is the biased filter through which her communication is being interpreted. Second, imposter syndrome is a shared experience, especially for those who are onlys in their workplace. Many high achieving Black women feel like imposters due to isolation, microaggressions, and lack of representation at senior levels. Understanding these structural causes can help reduce self blame and redirect energy towards systemic change. In Twana Carter's executive coaching practice, she found something remarkable. When Black female executives recognized the external factors behind their doubts, their confidence increased. When peer support reduced their isolation, their leadership flourished. The problem wasn't their competence, it was the constant questioning of that competence by others. Third, and perhaps most importantly, advocacy for yourself isn't just allowed, it's necessary. Speaking up about your ideas, needs, or boundaries may be misread by others, but is essential for personal growth and organizational change. Silence does not protect you from bias, it often reinforces it. Dr. Rice's work shows us that the women who ultimately broke through didn't do it by making themselves smaller. They did it by finding their authentic voice, building strategic alliances, and refusing to internalize others' limitations. Joyce Roach's experience at Avon demonstrates this beautifully. She didn't overcome by hiding her passion, she channeled it. She distinguished between real marginalization and internalized emotional reactions. She advocated openly about these issues, building solidarity with others, feeling similarly isolated. Her transparency inspired organizational dialogue around inclusion practices while empowering peers experiencing similar doubts. She pioneered conversations around psychological safety long before DEI became mainstream corporate priorities. This is the path forward, not dimming Black women's light, but removing the filters that distort how that light is perceived. So, what would happen if more organizations adopted this perspective? If workplaces began actively challenging biased narratives and recognized passion from Black women as leadership potential instead, The result would be greater inclusion at all levels. Organizations would benefit from increased innovation driven by diverse perspectives while reducing turnover linked directly to burnout caused by chronic stereotype threat and imposter syndrome. More equitable sponsorship structures would close advancement gaps currently harming both individuals' careers and companies' bottom lines. Some organizations are already seeing the benefits. The McKinsey report highlighted companies that piloted affinity groups specifically supporting Black women professionals. These initiatives improve retention rates among mid career Black women, precisely the point where many organizations hemorrhage diverse talent. But affinity groups alone aren't enough. Real change requires active sponsorship, not just mentorship. It requires leaders who will advocate for Black women's advancement, amplify their voices in meetings, and challenge biased perceptions when they emerge. It requires all of us to examine our own filters, to ask ourselves, am I perceiving passion differently based on who's expressing it? Today, I'm challenging you to do more than just listen. I'm challenging you to become an active part of dismantling this destructive bias. If you're a leader, commit today to amplifying the voices of Black women in your organization. When you see passion being misinterpreted as aggression, name it, challenge it, reframe it. If you're a colleague, pay attention to whose ideas get celebrated and whose get dismissed. Use your privilege to ensure that passionate contributions for Black women receive the same respect as anyone else's. And if you're a Black woman navigating these biased perceptions, know this: your passion is not aggression. Your voice matters. Your leadership is needed. And there are more and more of us committed to creating spaces where you can bring your full, authentic self to the table. The cost of maintaining these biases is too high, not just for Black women, but for all of us. We lose innovation, we lose talent, we lose the future we could create together. So I ask you, what will you do tomorrow that's different from today? How will you challenge the bias that confuses passion with aggression? How will you ensure that every voice at your table is heard, valued, and amplified? Because when we dismantle these barriers, we don't just create more equitable workplaces, we create more powerful, more innovative, more human organizations where everyone can thrive. The time for change isn't coming, it's here, and it starts with you.